Welcome to Free Grace International's Sphere of Excitement. I made that title up 1 second ago, but I like it. Maybe we'll stick with that. I'm with Shawn Lazar today and also our good friend Antonio Da Rosa. Say hello, fellas.
Hey, guys.
Hi, guys. Thanks for watching.
All right, see you later. So I've got a website pulled up, and I'm going to leave that up, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So if you're listening on audio, you can always get to our video versions by going to our website, and you can see whatever it is that we're looking at. But we're just going to have a conversation today. And Antonio, I think what we want to start with is I want to give folks a little bit of context on your story. As we were praying before this episode, you prayed for us, and you mentioned you mentioned that your life was on a certain path that kind of interested me. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that and kind of how God has pulled you in the direction He has.
Certainly, Lucas and Shawn, thanks for allowing me to be here with you guys today. I've actually been enjoying all your guys' stuff. I love the email that comes out, love watching the stories and the videos that you guys do and listening to the audios. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing and all the things that you're intending to do with stuff like trips and conferences and missions and stuff like that. It's just an amazing thing you guys are doing, and I'm very honored to be here on this program with you guys today. And thanks for that question, by the way, because you know, every person's story is kind of like a unique tapestry of God, because any person who's been saved, because He's like a destiny weaver, and He's a master chess player. And so He knows how to get you from where you're at to checkmate. And there was a time that I was just cruising along, and I was going to the left, and I was going to the right, and I was going forward, and I was going backward, all on my own will, doing whatever. And He knows how to counter each one of those things. And so that's the kind of master chess player he is. But I was born as the youngest of 8, and in the 70s. Wow. All my older brothers and sisters were like hippies and loved Led Zeppelin and classic rock and smoking weed. And
give us the setting. What state are we in here? Was this California?
Yeah, San Diego, California.
San Diego. Okay.
The most awesome, fabulous city in all of continental United States, in my estimation. Come out. I have a 4-bedroom house. You guys, anytime you want to come out to San Diego, cruise out. Got 4 bedrooms here. You guys can bring your families, whatever. So
now, is that an invitation to just me and Shawn, or everybody watching?
You know what? I'm open to. I mean, I don't know if I got the gift of hospitality or anything like that, but I would love to host some free grace.
Maybe we'll do a conference at your house. How do you feel about 200 people showing up?
Yeah, man, standing room only. I got a pool in the backyard. You know, we can have some fruity drinks and, you know, be on inflatables and talk theology and do a conference. It'd be awesome.
I love it. Okay, so let's get back to your story. So you're the youngest of 8. You're growing up in San Diego. I think you made a drug reference in there. Did you make a drug reference in there?
Sure, I did. I think that I tried alcohol at about 12 and was smoking weed every day at 13.
Wow.
Lost my virginity at 13. By 14, was using acid and methamphetamine.
Wow.
And so that was the kind of path that I was on. And I had looked up to my older brothers and sisters and thought, you know, they know how to have life, and I want what they have. You know, they're cool, their friends like them, they seem to be having fun. And my parents were kind of absent, and so I didn't have like many role models or anyone telling me what to do. And so my path was one of destruction. I was on a path of destruction. And here's the story, though. You guys know David Jeremiah? You heard of that guy?
Yeah, I'm aware of him.
Yeah.
My brother was going to his church, and long story short, he invites me to a Sunday school class picnic, a barbecue at Ski Beach here in San Diego. And I was living in a shack downtown, man. Just got fired from my job. All of my unemployment was going towards $200 for rent, and I was making another $200. That was all for alcohol and drugs, so I was making $400 on it. And he comes and shows up at my house and takes me out to lunch. And I said, "You're paying, right?" Of course he was paying. And I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu. And he starts talking to me about Jesus, and I was like, I didn't want to hear about it, because you know, I grew up Catholic, and growing up Catholic is like, you know, it's just kind of culture, it's kind of traditional. I went to Catholic school, But he
Yeah.
started talking about Jesus and why I never heard of anyone talk about Jesus before, but I really want to get under his skin. So I just said, talking like, did Jesus condone drinking because he turned water into wine? And I was just giving him a hard time.
Mm.
But on the way home, he goes, Tonio, you going to heaven? And I go, I think I'm going to heaven. He's like, why do you think? And I says, well, when I die, God's going to have some gigantic scale. And he's going to weigh my good works versus my bad works. And if I think that I'm going to do good enough, and he's going to let me into heaven. And I just remember these words he said as he dropped me off. He just says, Antonio, that's not how the Bible says. And I was like, what? Fast forward, I call him the next day and say, hey, bro, you know what? I wanted to get another free meal. So I said, thanks so much for taking me out for a free meal. You've been wanting me to get to church. If you take me out to breakfast or, whatever before, I'll go to church with you. And he says, all right, cool. He takes me, instead, he says, come to my this Sunday school class that we're doing. And a barbecue, they were going jet skiing, water skiing, volleyball, stuff like that. And I go there, and everyone was just coming up and saying, hi, hey, Antonio, what's up? This and that. I was like, dude, this is kind of fake. I don't know. Like, did he tell them that I was coming? And they're trying to, like, welcome me into some kind of cult or something like that. And I went about 50 yards away, and I twisted up a marijuana cigarette and smoked it. And all of a sudden, I just saw them, how they were relating to each other like a family. They were having fun.
Wow.
And they weren't using drugs or alcohol. And I was like, I was on the outside looking in and kind of desiring what they had.
Wow.
The next day I get to the church, Shadow Mountain. I've never been to a Protestant church for a service ever.
Wow.
And they have
Wow.
a full choir, this full orchestra. And all of a sudden you just see these like choir coming in very silently, and then they're there, and then the symphony orchestra comes in, and they go into the little pit, and it's like all quiet, and all of a sudden just like this blaring anthem, just whatever. I was like, whoa, I've never seen nothing like this at all. And it was a missions conference, and dudes were coming off on the left and right of the stage talking about missions. And
did you know what that meant at the time?
I didn't, and that's great that you asked that, because I thought a missionary at this time were like the people who couldn't make it into society. Like they were like, okay, they can't make it in America, so they're going to go assert their American authority over some hapless people groups around the world somewhere. And so that's what they're the ugly and the intelligent people of. I was like 21 years old, and that was my thoughts. The ugly and intelligent people of the world who couldn't make it here. But they're crazy thing, Lucas and John. They were coming off from both sides of the stage. Shadow Mountain, the church for David Jeremiah, takes 20% of their tithe and they give it to missionaries. I can find out later. And they were saying where they were a missionary at, what they were doing, what their mission board was. These people were good-looking, intelligent people, but what I couldn't understand is why were they leaving the opportunity and the prosperity and the comfort of America for the mission field?
Yeah.
I couldn't understand that. But at the end...
Did you talk to your brother about that, or was that just sort of like a floating question?
Well, I was thinking this in my heart, because at the end there... the speaker, and it wasn't David Jeremiah at this time, the speaker was like, does anyone want to come to know Jesus? And I was in this 3,500 person auditorium all the way at the back at the top, and I just felt something tugging on my heart.
Wow.
And I go, I got to go down there.
Wow.
And I went down for like an altar call. I didn't know what an altar call was. I just wanted to find out about Jesus.
Yeah.
And so the crazy thing is that it must have been a good message, because all of the altar call rooms were taken up. They have a bunch of altar call rooms in the back of the stage. They were all taken up. He had to take me up into the symphony orchestra room, the dude did.
Huh.
And he sat me down, Lucas and Shawn, and as clear as day I remembered, he sat me down and says, Antonio, you ain't got to leave here without knowing beyond the shadow of a doubt that you're a child of God, that you have everlasting life, and you're going to heaven when you die.
Was Macho Man Randy Savage the guy who's?
I went. I can't remember the dude's name and face, because I can't remember his name or his face. It was October 3rd, 1994.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, whoa. And I says, is that something you can know? Because I had on several times before, you guys, thought to myself, I had almost OD'd on drugs. There was a time I was on my bed and I was like ODing, and I've heard demons in my head going, we're taking you down. You're going down with us. You're going to hell with us. And I was like, no. And I thought if I died right then, I was going to hell.
Wow.
And being a part of, I don't want to say anything bad about any other religion and stuff like that, but the where I was at spiritually, they could never let you know whether or not you're going to heaven when you die. You have to wait until you die. And so I never knew you could know. And so... were
you skeptical at all, or was it like you were happy to hear that and accepted it? Or, I mean, like, did it take some time?
I was ripe for it.
Okay.
So, Lucas, I was sitting on the boardwalk once on July 4th, the boardwalk in San Diego, July 4th, and it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. I was toasted. And along comes this dude about 1 o'clock in the morning to me and my friend. He starts talking about Jesus. And I was like, dude, just get the heck out of here. I wasn't ready to hear anything about Jesus. But then I ended up getting in trouble for stealing nitrous oxide tanks from various hospitals around San Diego County. And I got in trouble for that and had a felony. And God was like, I was like, Mom, what am I going to do? I might be going to jail. And she's like, why don't you start reading the Bible and praying? So,
Wow.
Okay, maybe God will get me out of this. And so I started aligning. And it was in this season that I had starting aligning a little bit towards God, that it gave me years to finally hear this dude who was telling me I didn't have to leave there without knowing. I was just like, can you know? And I said, I want you to tell me. And dude, straight up just busted, I'm being honest, busted out John 3:16.
Wow.
And how was it that I lived in America for 22, 23 years and never heard this message that whoever believes in Jesus has eternal life? How I was like tripping. I mean, I went to Catholic school. I went to 8 years of school. There was never a Bible to be seen there. Like, there was just religion books and catechism and stuff like that. But I was like, whoa. And he just explained to me that the reason why that he could offer such a gift was that Jesus died and rose again, that, the day of my birth, the day of my death, he paid for it all. I just I believed right there.
Yeah.
I come out of the room, my brother's waiting for me, and he goes, so what happened? And I swear I used these words. I says, I'm saved, as tears just come down my face.
Wow.
Yeah. I kind of want to tell you about what happens next, though. This is my free grace journey.
Okay. Yeah, that's my next question is, like, it sounds like you had a sense of grace already to some extent, but, like, I don't know David Jeremiah's kind of program over there, but I get the feeling it might be free grace friendly in some ways, but isn't really where we are now. So, like, what's the next steps? What comes after that?
Go ahead.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
I'm really interested in your point when you said, Antonio, that you were ripe. You were ready.
Okay.
Not everybody is ripe, but there were things in your life that got you to that point where you were ready to be just plucked. You were ready to hear that gospel, and so you might get this might come into your free grace journey. But I wonder, what would you say made you ripe? Is it because you saw the destruction in your life? Is it because you felt that unfulfilled? Is it because the way your life was going, like a work salvation message just would not have been believable like that, but grace was? Or what would you say?
I love that. Later on, I came to hear of this thing called an Ingalls scale. The Ingalls scale. It's in missiology, the doctrine of missions, and it's a scale that's -10 to 0 to +10. -10 being the most rank atheist in the world, +10 being the most spiritual saint, and 0 is conversion. And I don't know where I was on that list there. It goes from atheist to, agnostic, and all the way down to finally conversion. But what I feel was God has this, looking back, everything's 2020. I feel God was calling me this whole time. I mean, he was drawing me to himself. And it took that, me thinking that I was going to get put in jail at 20 years old, where I started going, and I believed in God. So being raised a Catholic was very helpful to me because I believed in God. I love God. I thought so. And it was, I think that God is trying to draw people through because every person comes in a different subjective state of mind. And so he kind of knows how to address things in each person to try to draw them. Now, if there is some kind of hang up, you won't be able to, get further down towards that zero. But the breakthrough for me was the time where I thought I had some felonies and I thought I was going to go to jail. And I just started opening up the Bible, reading it and praying. And then my brother talking about Jesus and inviting me to church. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that because I hear two very different, you said God is the weaver here. He's the tapestry maker. And he's using two very different things. He's using kind of like the fear, frankly, of having committed a felony and potential jail time and all that's involved in that. So there's a fear there that makes you turn towards him. But he's also using the love of your brother, right? Just to draw you there too. So it's not one or it's both and. God can use all kinds of different things to draw a person to him. You're not saying, by the way, you're not taking a Calvinist view that God predestined you for eternal salvation and hasn't predestined other people. You're saying he's a chess master, so he's working with you, with your free will, to draw you to a certain point. And a lot of people don't understand. That's an important part of the free grace position, I think. This idea that we're free and God is drawing but not forcing.
I love that because it wasn't irresistible. So yes, God is a chess master. That if you make moves, he'll counter. But if you choose not to make a move, then he can't do okay, the game's over at that point, right? If I don't choose to move to the left or right, if I don't choose to go forward, advance, or retreat, he can't do anything until I make moves. And so it wasn't irresistible. I could have resisted it, but I just, he did. I think that he did kind of work on that meaning and purpose thing. Because when I heard about the missionaries, it was like, whoa, dude, like these guys are living for something.
Yeah.
Like, they have this purpose. Like, and I felt so empty. I had once fancied myself like, I'm being honest here, a reincarnation of Jim Morrison. He died 2 weeks before I was born, and I used to tell people that his soul was running around, flipping out, and it leaped into mine, and it was still there. I'm serious, like some kind of Indian shaman or something like that.
Did you believe that, or was that just kind of like a
it was
dramatic?
My story, but I lied so much about it that I've started believing it. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I needed to be someone. I needed to wrap myself around some kind of identity because I had no meaning or purpose, and that was kind of the meaning I was being able to derive from my circumstances, not knowing anything, not having anyone come alongside me or anything like that.
Yeah. And so you said you were evangelized, you were presented with being a child of God. So that was really meaningful to you.
Yeah. Well, yes. The thing, Shawn and Lucas, that was so awesome was I could know. Like I knew. Like I left that place, and as I'm thinking about it, it's like God's grace, man. Like I knew, you guys, like I knew that I was accepted by him, that I was a part of, I was beloved, and it didn't, and that was the whole idea, and I was just, and so the very next week, you guys, I wanted to replicate that message. I was like, wow, I heard this message, and I have people who I want to get saved. Like I, for some crazy reason, I knew that it wasn't of works, it was only by grace, and it was through faith. And that was just from the very first time I had heard it. Like I'd never heard of nothing of like that before. But when I left that room that day, dude, was so clear that I left knowing. And so the next week I was like, I want to replicate that message. And so I go to the information booth at Shadow Mountain, and they have a tract rack on top of their desk. They had a tract rack where you can spin it, and it has like 20 different tracks on there. It's like someone had told me, I was like, you can grab those, and that will kind of teach you how to tell someone else. So I took one example of each, you guys. I went home and I read these things, and each one I was saying something different.
Okay.
One had 3 steps. One had 5 steps. One had this and that. And here's what happened. This was my first crisis of existence in a step towards free grace. The big one for me was the idea that you had to repent of your sins. And I said, I didn't do that. Am I saved? I didn't do that. I didn't have a telephone at the time. I had, because I didn't pay my telephone bill. So I went to a payphone, and I got the phone number for Shadow Mountain. And I called and I said, hey, can I talk to David Jeremiah? He's like, who? I got a question for, because here I am. Like all these things saying something different. And I wanted to be reassured. At first, the only reason I wanted to get him was to tell everyone that message of John 3:16. But then as I read those things, dude, I lost all assurance at that point. I didn't know if I was saved. And I went through a deep funk for like 2 weeks. Talked to the dude on the phone. And
did you get David on the phone?
No. This is they says, what can I help you with? I told the operator my theological problems. Well, let me get another pastor for you. Another pastor got on the phone. He didn't know a theological thing. He was no help at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's this one discipleship. No one discipled me. I had a discipleship book. I think it was a Navigator's. What I remember about this book was it had a ship's wheel on it, and it had different.
Yeah.
You guys seen that one? Is that the Navigator's discipleship?
Yeah, I think it is Navigators. Let me see if I can pull it up. I'll get an image from it as you talk.
And one of the little things was assurance of salvation, right? And so I'm reading this, and there's all of these verses from the Gospel of John. And so I had a stack of blank paper, and I just started writing these verses out from the Gospel of John. And I was plastering them on the wall of my house. I was looking through my stuff recently, my storage, and I just brought it home. I still have those sheets from 1993 that I plastered on.
Wow.
Wow.
So I plastered them on my wall, you guys. And I'd come home, and Satan's trying to get me, or something's trying to get me in the sense of you're not saved. And I just point to the wall and point to that verse and point to John 3:16 and point to, John 10 and whatever the verse was where it says, if I believe, I am saved and I'm never going to perish. And I finally got over it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering,
I like that.
I don't know if you can see this. Let me see if I can pull this up. So I found a wheel that has the obedient Christian, prayer, fellowship, the word, witnessing, but I'm not sure that is the Navigators. It doesn't actually say it. Does that look familiar? Can you see that?
No, it was like a ship's wheel that had the little things coming out.
Okay, so it was
the
like
little, little bars that come out of the wheel.
Okay. Yeah, so I have seen that before.
It was in a little blue binder book that had 3 rings in it or something like that back in the day in the 90s.
Okay.
But that was my first thing. I have not since that day doubted my I've never doubted my salvation, having eternal life from that day, from that time on, ever again, just because of the Gospel of John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I like that you pointed outside of literally you pointed outside of yourself to the promise that comes to us.
Yeah.
Not looking at anything in your life, not saying, no, Satan, I know I'm saved because I've done this good thing today.
Yeah.
You pointed outside of yourself to the promise, which is great.
I mean, how could you ever have assurance if that's what you were doing? I mean, thinking about your history, I mean, this is where the breakdown of lordship salvation happens is for those who were raised in church and obey pretty well. It's real convenient to say, look to your works. But what about somebody that's doped out on the street, and they're coming in the doors and they're like, man, it's going to take me years to get where I don't feel like I might OD tomorrow, or years before I am not thinking about suicide every other hour, For those people, I mean, I can't imagine the kind of pressure and the kind of failure that it builds into the mindset to say that you have to look to your works to find assurance. I mean, were you feeling that? Was that part of in those weeks where you were feeling like maybe you weren't saved? I mean, for you, were you looking at your history, or I mean, I don't know. Like, what was your experience with that?
I love that you asked that, and as I look back at 2020. I was waxing in my mind theological, although I didn't know. So I was like, okay, I don't remember repenting. Like the dude didn't even tell me that. He didn't say that that was a requirement for me to be saved, to have eternal life. And then I started thinking it through. I can repent right now, but then I was like, dude, I am a mess. I am coming to Jesus with so much that how do I know that I repented enough?
Yeah.
How did I know that I found everything I needed to repent of? And I go, could I ever be saved with that kind of paradigm?
Yeah.
So I was thinking like that. That was what I was thinking. And, the crazy thing, no one came and answered it for me. It was that Navigator's book. It was that discipleship book I was going over myself, and those verses from the Gospel of John. That was it. And God.
Yeah. Wow. So from that point, kind of walk us through the next steps in your story. Because I
love it.
Because again, people probably know your name because you are so incredibly active within the Free Grace movement, a lot through your blog, which I've got up on the screen here, but also through Facebook. I mean, how did Antonio get to be this character that people are talking about? I hear your name from people pretty often. So how did we get to that point?
Well, I want to give grace and glory to God. If anything that's good that you hear from me, it's all God. And any of the bad stuff, I take 100% ownership of. So I've been a knucklehead. I have argued theology in the flesh. And so I just want to...
Wait a minute. It's possible to argue theology in the flesh? How does that work?
Oh my gosh. Oh my. And here's the crazy thing is that I came up with some good stuff during that time, but I feel that my efforts are not going to make it very well at the Bema for those times that I was arguing it, but they were helpful though in where I'm at now. But so
it makes me think of Philippians, where Paul is saying, "Hey, I'm glad at least the gospel's being shared or whatever, but they're doing it with false motives." I mean, do you feel like did you kind of resonate with that? You think some bad motives were mixed in those cases?
Because you go from one sense of identity to the next. So I went from drugs. So here's the thing, and I think you'll enjoy this. What was my next step? Because then I can get to this questioning in my next step. What I did was I just opened the Bible and started reading the New Testament. So the moment I got saved, that's all I did was read the New Testament, read the New Testament, read the New Testament. And I was like reading this stuff about the discipleship passages and stuff like that. And it was just like, if you want to save your life, you got to lose. If you want to lose your life, you're going to lose your life. You're going to save it. And like all I was getting from reading the Gospels is that my life has to be shaped and fashioned around the Lord Jesus Christ to have true meaning, true worth, true value. And I was like, what's the best way that I can actually live that out? And I felt like I thought I had a call on my life to ministry. So I was like on fire going to church and going to Bible studies and reading the Bible myself. But then I ended up going, so 10 months later, I was living on campus at a Bible college. The one that was hooked up with Shadow Mountain Church. It's called Southern California Seminary.
Okay.
I was living on campus there. And this is the dumb thing, Lucas, Shawn.
Yeah.
I turned in the Bible for a theology book. And then my growth stopped. So it wasn't about kind of knowing God. It was now knowing about Him, learning about Him rather than growing.
Hey, I take that as a personal attack.
How so?
Are you saying all this stuff isn't helping me?
No. So that's a funny thing.
No, you're making. Antonio, I want to agree with you. You are making a great point. Knowing, it's like we're all married. I
Not
could
to
read
each other.
I could read book not to each other. I could read I could read books about my wife, but actually knowing my wife and being with her, two completely different things. Same with kids. I could read all the child rearing books that are out there. But actually having kids and being a dad to the kids, two different things. And so, I agree with you. Theology should never be a replacement for actually knowing Christ,
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's where when we fall into the trap of arguing theology from the flesh, do you feel like that's where it comes from, is is not being in the source, not being in Scripture, but actually taking like a second layer, a kind of a zoomed out look? Or, I mean, like, I'm not going to let go of the arguing theology in the flesh, by the way. I'm going to keep asking about it throughout the story because I feel like you have said something there that is really powerful. And I think you may have more experience than the average person on how to overcome our propensity to argue theology in the flesh. So like when you were at, was it Southern Bible? What did you say? Southern Bible? Yeah. So, okay. So when you were there, do you feel like you got a taste for arguing theology in the flesh? I mean, was that something that was happening, or, I mean, I don't know. How do those things connect?
I was still young in my 20s, and I was still searching for a sense of meaning stemming from an identity. And so I fancied myself someone who can learn easy and quickly. So I just took to the books. And as I got this knowledge, I just started getting puffed up. And so it was a cry of my soul for identity. And so finally, when someone had a differing view than me, I think the very first theological thing that I argued very vehemently, by the way, at Bible college in my 20s was dichotomy versus trichotomy. That was the just one, dude. And I took the dichotomy position because of Ryrie. He called it a bipartite union or something like that back in the day. And I was so adamant about it. It's like, wow, this is something. I have an identity. I'm standing for something. So
for people who don't know, this is the debate between whether are human beings soul and body, or that's dichotomy, or are we spirit, soul, and body, which is trichotomy. So that's for the theology nerds out there.
Yeah, and for those of you that think like me, let's keep the story going. What's next? That is the story. I mean, that is the story, right? Because you were passionate about it. Now, were you passionate about it because it was of utmost importance, or were you passionate about it because you were looking for that identity of a person who is passionate?
It's a mixed bag. As I look back, there were very genuine times still of devotion and fellowship with God. But, I mean, God has to take you from where you're at to where he's going to bring you. And he had to break you in several ways. He's the master destiny weaver. He's the master chef who had the recipe for my life. And I had to go through a lot of hardships in order to be where I'm at now. I'm not saying I'm anything right now, but I'm light years from where I used to be.
Yeah.
And so the interesting thing is that I was a 4-point Calvinist at the time. Because that's kind of like the Southern California Seminary is kind of like a I don't want to say DTS knockoff, but that's what it was. And at that time, Schaefer and all them 4-point-ish, Ryrie 4-point-ish Calvinists. So after I learned that, after I had to unlearn all that over the course of the next 5 years. But here's where free grace comes in. You might think I was living in a dorm there that's about the size of a closet. And I remember what I did. Every morning for breakfast, I had a bowl of cereal. For lunch, I had a bologna and cheese sandwich. And then for dinner, I had a bowl of chili with some tortilla chips. That was every single night. And I would go to their kitchenette somewhere else to heat up my chili. I went there once, and there was this book there. It was a blue book. And here it is.
For those on audio, he's reaching back to his
I know that book.
His bookshelf.
This was the book.
Absolutely free
book.
By Zane Hodges.
In 1995-ish. It was sitting there on the table and said absolutely free. And it said, I didn't know.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you stole it?
I did. No. Well, it said absolutely free.
It says absolutely free. I mean, maybe it is.
And so I thought that I would borrow it and bring it back, but I never did.
But you didn't. But you still could. You still could. Now, for those who are on audio and don't have the video, it looks like he has chewed on the binding and frazzled every page in it. I mean, you have worked that book over. Tell us about your experience in those pages.
Oh my gosh, it was, as when I got saved, I started consuming the New Testament. But then there was those verses that how do these verses line up with this message of John 3:16 that I learned, right?
Yeah.
And so I went through the New Testament having the dissonance of certain discipleship passages that I couldn't explain. And what I did is that I just reserved judgment on them, meaning like I don't know what this means. But all I know is that John 3:16 is true. And whatever these are saying, it ain't gonna it ain't gonna contradict it. So that's the way I kind of was. But when I read this, I was like, he made it super easy, like your book. He made it super easy. There's a difference, and it made all the world's difference to me. When I read this and I consumed this, it was, to me, explained so clearly that I kind of fell in love with that dude. I kind of fell in love with the dude who wrote the book, and I found an email address or something for him and began to correspond with him. And then I found the GES, which,
by the way, we're talking about Zane Hodges for people
Zane Hodges,
who don't know.
Absolutely free.
yeah.
I'm seeing a pattern here, Antonio. You are a persistent person. You have questions and you pursue people who might have answers, it seems like.
So David,
is that safe to say?
So David Jeremiah didn't take your call, but what about Zane Hodges?
That's an interesting thing, man. Like, so the way they were teaching me at the Bible college was like this. I don't know if you guys ever read Louis Sperry Schaefer's Grace, the marvelous theme. I have it somewhere, but Grace, the marvelous theme. It has this really cut and dry dichotomy between law and grace, and that's the way that my school was teaching me and training me. And so, kind of like nothing in the Gospels is for grace people except the upper room discourse. Everything else was for a whole nother dispensation and stuff like that. That's the way I was being trained.
Ah, okay.
Wait a minute. I need to chew on that for a second. Could you say that again?
Yeah. So with this Louis Sperry Schaefer theology, it's like this really, and I'm sure it comes from the dispensationalists before him, Schofield, and that there's a really hard line between law and grace, between the old dispensation, the new dispensation, and since Christ had not died yet, the church had not been instituted yet, that the synoptics and everything in John except the upper room discourse was for a different dispensation.
Okay, so it shifts then. So you're basically seeing the end of the pre-church age when the discourse starts?
Yeah. And so they're like, you can get some principles out of these things, but it really isn't for you. And so I read about his take on the parable of the prodigal son. And I was like, dude didn't just full on applied it to the church. And I was like, that's kind of weird for me. So I found his email address. Very first email, I emailed Zane Hodges, and it was a question about the prodigal son. I was like, how did you do that? How did you take this passage and just translate it over and apply it wholeheartedly to the church? And he says, Antonio, he wrote me, dude, actually, I never thought I was going to get an email back.
Yeah.
He emails me back. And I remember this was the gist of it. And it said, and it was nice to know you, this and this, very cordial, very polite. But then he goes something like this. He says, Antonio, I don't think that the Holy Spirit would give such great emphasis and space for the words of Jesus, who was instituting a church, if it didn't apply very directly towards the church. And I was like, from then on, my brand of dispensationalism changed, and there began a relationship with him of emailing back and forth. It progressed to supporting his ministry, Kerugma, finding the GES, and just consuming everything that I could find from the GES, and especially Zane Hodges.
Yeah. So what was did you meet him? I guess you probably did eventually, right?
Yes. So I remember at my first GES conference, I don't remember when it was. It probably was the very, very, very early 2000s, maybe 2001, 2 or 3.
Okay.
I flew out there, and I got to meet him. I went to Victor Street and had the Lord's table. I met Bob Wilkin at that time at the Lord's table. I got to go out to lunch. This is the craziest thing, that this guy was the most accessible person that I ever, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
later on, I was talking to Zane, and he goes, "Where are you going to church?" And I go, "I'm going to Shadow Mountain." "Oh, David Jeremiah, I heard he's become a pretty good preacher. As a matter of fact, I had him in one of my classes."
Wow.
Did? I was like, "Hey, give me like 3 or 4 of your books, sign him for him." And so he ends up signing him for David Jeremiah. I grab him, and somehow I got a hold of David Jeremiah. He allowed me 15 minutes with him in the green room, and I presented to him
Wow.
books that were signed by Zane Hodges. And he was like, "I remember Zane Hodges. He used to come into the class every single day, and the very first thing he would do is put the Cincinnati Red score on the board." That was the one thing he remembered.
Wow.
Interesting.
So
Man.
I just started consuming all this stuff, and it was interesting how, because it was so clear to me, the distinctions between discipleship and regeneration, that I just started consuming all of this information, reading all different kinds of books on this stuff. And that's when I started my own blog. So this blog right here, the template that you see there, it's an old template that I had another blog that had the same template at free-grace.blogspot.com. And it has some 200 articles there, and I had another one called Unashamed of Grace. And I just started my journey of theological discourse. And this is where you get a lot from listening. I get a lot from listening and reading too, but where I've gotten the most is through obviously studying the Bible for myself, because and that's something briefly I want to touch on before we end today. But it's through theological discourse. And yeah, there it is. There's the old one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Let me pull it. Yeah. I almost didn't even recognize you there. That's you, right?
That's me in India in my 20s.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Here's the thing is that, and this is where me and Shawn come in, is that I would write an article, and I remember the first one that I got on the target of all the Calvinists in the blogosphere. The blogosphere was a huge thing at one time, and it was this one that I got on their radar. It says, "Why sacrifice for God if you don't know he sacrificed for you?" That was the name of this blog title. Why sacrifice for God? The Calvinists are telling people to sacrifice for Jesus, for God, when they're not even sure if Jesus sacrificed for them. And it was an article, and I got on everyone's radar at that point, like a bunch of bigwigs, like I can't remember the dude's names, but John MacArthur's, all of his underlings. I got on all of John MacArthur's underlings. They had this blog called Pyromaniacs. They may still have it. It's all his, and it was just a cool time. But I got to write articles, and the cool thing about it is that the meta of the comments underneath, I got to really hone and sharpen as I heard objections. I would sometimes dismiss some of my convictions, other times modify them, and it really helped my theological growth and maturity is through people with the theological discourse, especially fielding objection. And it's very helpful in writing too, because I process as I talk and I write. And so like I have all this information, but as I talk or write, stuff starts coming together in ways that I've never seen them I've never felt them come together, and I feel like that's God illuminating me. Like I do all this study, and it has all this stuff inside my soul and inside my head, but as I talk or as I write, the Holy Spirit is putting it into ways that I'd never had thought about it, and it's through discourse, through going back and forth with people. And
So it sounds like you're saying it's okay to have real-time conversations on subjects that aren't settled yet in front of other people. Is that, I mean,
Yes.
is that Say,
Yes.
I mean, what happens if we don't do that?
Then you're just you're gonna remain unchallenged. This is the cool thing, is that I was telling someone this yesterday, that when you write good theology, you should anticipate other people's objections. If you don't know all the objections to that, you're not going to be able to anticipate. You're not going to be able to have a strong case in people's minds, because they're going to have in their mind objections as they're reading your material that remains unchallenged. And through the objections too, I'm able to look at the subject matter from different perspectives, and I grow and have to modify, and I go, well, you know what? I don't think that this is actually true. And it's just this, it's like a trial and error thing. But it's really grown me a lot. Some of it was done in the flesh. I like to think now that I've grown and I'm maturing in the way I do it. And as a matter of fact, me and Shawn, probably, I think over the course of the last 4 to 5 years, through Facebook Messenger, have had hours and hours and hours of discourse with each other.
Yeah, we talk at least every week, usually a couple times a week, and we're doing just what you said, Antonio. And this is one of the reasons why we're friends. I 100% agree with you that as a writer, you want to engage the best objections that your readers are going to have, and you can't know what those are unless you actually hear them from people, tell them to you. You need to be, I love what you said, you need to be challenged. You can't, your theology won't be strong if you go unchallenged, if you just kind of live in this echo chamber.
Okay.
And so debate sharpens your own thinking. I mean, I think we've learned from each other. We've sharpened our opinions. We haven't always agreed.
Yeah, no, right?
But we both agree that the process is good for us, right?
And I just want to say that we agree on a lot.
Yeah, I was about to say.
We're both free grace guys. Yes.
I want to hear from both of you. So I'm not involved in these conversations for the most part. I want to hear from both of you. Shawn, you first. Tell me something that Antonio has changed your mind on.
I want to hear that too, because I don't know if that's ever happened, but we'll see.
Yeah. So what I really appreciate about Antonio is
no. Don't go into some.
No. Here's
No.
What he's done for me is he has helped me see the core of the issues in a, I don't know if I want to name names or anything, but Antonio, he loves Zane Hodges. I love Zane Hodges. I don't follow Zane Hodges as closely as Antonio does, but Antonio doesn't agree with Zane Hodges 100% either, which is also what I appreciate about him. But what I've learned from Antonio is to see, okay, what's the meat? What are some core issues here? And I did not see those core issues before, and Antonio totally cleared that up for me and taught me about what are the pivotal issues that I need to make my mind up on. And so I would not have seen that except for him. So I really appreciate that.
I love those
So
questions.
you didn't answer the question, though. Give me something he's changed your mind on. Has it happened?
Well, I think what has he changed? He's changed my mind about what I thought was the things that I thought were important, the things that I thought were like the real issues at stake. I was wrong about, and I think he's shown me this is what's really important.
That's a great preamble to answering my question. So give me something you've changed your mind on.
That's actually good. I accept that.
I thought I was answering. I don't know.
That's
I
very
honestly
general.
I don't feel like I'm dodging.
One of the accusations against you, Shawn, has been, and it's been about Antonio. Is there a time when Shawn has changed his mind on something due to Antonio's conversations? Because you guys do some privately, but you do some publicly too, and I don't know the answer to that. And so you're saying there are things. I'm saying, what are they? Like, what are some of those issues?
Okay, so he's, I don't know. So you're saying what position? So Antonio, first of all, Antonio and I agree on a bunch of things, right? We're both free grace guys, so we already agree on a whole lot. But some of his.
Do you agree with that, Antonio? That y'all agree on a lot?
Oh yeah, like the lion's share.
Okay.
Right. I mean, we're both Christians and evangelicals.
Antonio, would you say you agree on the essentials?
Yes, and yes.
Wow.
I
Okay.
would, but at the same time, we have different ways of articulating them.
Okay.
Yes, on the essentials, absolute 100% agreement.
So I'll say this, maybe for background, just for people who are interested and who are listening in, probably for the last 4 years or whatever long you said, we've been talking about the atonement. It's not like we've been discussing 100 issues. We've been discussing the atonement for several years. More recently, we've been discussing Antonio's ideas about forgiveness and justification. So that's maybe in the last year or so. So we've been really going hard at that. And maybe more recently, how normative the Gospel of John is for evangelism. I would say, is that fair, Antonio? Are those like the three big areas that we've been debating?
Yeah.
And so, Lucas, I think when I hear your question, I hear you saying, has Antonio convinced you of his positions on these three areas? Okay, so I want people to understand it's three things.
Yeah.
And no, we're still going back and forth. But what he's done for me is clear up what are the major issues I need to decide on in those three areas.
And Lucas, I just want to tell you one thing is that I've made it a personal endeavor and vocation of mine to change Shawn's mind on several things.
I've noticed that. Yeah.
I think that for the rest of my life.
And also get him in trouble.
No, well, no,
Not your mission. I know that's not your mission. I know that's not your mission.
No. So there is one thing I kind of want to briefly discuss. I know.
Wait, I want to know. The opposite too, Antonio. Okay. Are there any identifiable things that Shawn has changed your mind on? I mean, he dodged the question. I'm just going to admit it. He dodged the question. But like for you, is there anything that you've said? I think he's right on.
I think the way I want to characterize it is that since we agree on so much, it's the fine tuning that we're diverging on. And we're kind of hunkering down on our own versions of fine tuning, and so I can't say that I have changed my mind. But what I can say is that Shawn is it's been very helpful, and hopefully I'm helping. I put it yesterday that I want to be an irritant in his life that produces pearls, and he does the same for me.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you guys are hardening. You guys are hardening each other. You're a couple of pharaohs. And your hearts are getting hard.
Okay, well here, I will say this. I'll give this one. So for Antonio on his position on forgiveness is that it all has to do with fellowship and it's a benefit for this life.
Okay.
And so in that debate over the last maybe year,
which
and a
is
half,
not a mainstream view, right? I mean that's
not a
pretty
mainstream.
Unique, right?
This is his, and so. Naturally, in a debate, I thought, okay, I'm going to take the opposite position. All forgiveness is positional. And he convinced me that that's not possible. There's just too many references to fellowship forgiveness. And so I came back to I believe there's fellowship and I believe there's positional. So he convinced me that it's not all positional.
See, I was kind of thinking that was sort of your default position anyway, Shawn. Had you kind of moved away from that for a while?
I will, for the last year and a half, I was exploring, let's see if Antonio's totally wrong and it's the exact opposite.
And which is what you wanted, right? You wanted to say Antonio's totally wrong.
No, this is just, I think you have to do that in a debate.
No, I got you.
When you're in a debate, you have to argue the opposite side, not necessarily because you believe it, but because you need to know what the arguments are and the options and the objections.
Yeah, you're checking holes in the wall. That's you. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's something. Well, Antonio, he gave one. He showed his underwear drawer. You got it. Can you think of one that you've moved on?
I think that he just sharpens me, and I've enjoyed reading his journal articles, his books. I enjoy his blogs. Although sometimes I'll read one and he'll immediately get some kind of a message from me on Facebook Messenger. And I feel sometimes that he words and uses terms in the midst of the way that he's writing his blogs just to me. Just kidding.
I think there's a psychological term for that.
I feel that way sometimes. So.
I think there's I think there's a psychological term for when you believe someone who's broadcasting is speaking directly to you. I don't know what it is.
Lucas actually, this morning, Lucas sent me a text about a Facebook post I made, and he was like, "Who are you?" Yeah, what did you say? So I'm like, "Who are you trying to poke? Are you deliberately trying to poke someone?" I'm like, "No, I'm not.
No,
I'm not. I probably am, but I don't have anyone in mind. No."
No, it was a real question of like, I want to identify whether or not. Okay, so what Shawn said was very vague. It was not a specific jab, but I've identified that I have a hair trigger for what I might call ungentle, language, so like if I anticipate that, there's going to be somebody that might be upset about this, my trigger for that, Shawn, would you agree that my trigger for that is more, I have a lower tolerance for it, I guess, or something like that.
Yeah, you are a caring person, and you're a.
But I don't know how to solve it. I don't know. I don't know what to do. It's just like, I note it. I'm like, and so what I wanted to know is, Shawn, did you do that on accident? Or did you do it on purpose? Or am I wrong? That's another possibility. I could just be wrong. That won't offend somebody. And so that's what I was trying to explore is like, are we, am I seeing phantoms in the fog? Or am I more sensitive to it or something? So that was the nature of that.
Yeah.
And I don't think we really came to a conclusion.
I think in the passion of debate, you end up characterizing the other side in a way that, it will be provocative, and probably I am doing that, as part of the pleasure of the debate, or maybe it's part of doing theology in the flesh.
Yeah, it could be. Well, Antonio, I sense even from California, I feel the vibes that there's a subject you want to talk about. Now, here's what I'm hoping is that you have a spicy subject that we can demonstrate for a couple of minutes. What does healthy debate look like? Is there am I right that there's a subject you kind of have on your heart?
Tons of subjects that are always on my heart, and the big one probably is always the content of saving faith. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but a minute ago it sounded like there was something.
Well, there was something actually I wanted to share.
Yeah. I was thinking there was. Yeah.
Yeah. Here it is. I love reading books and stuff like that and learning. And recently, I bought a book for Shawn. It was E.D. Hirsch, and I can't remember. It's what was the name of the book? Something about principles of interpretation, or
I'll pull it up if I can find
interpretation. And
validity.
So here's the essential nature of the argument of that book. When I start reading a passage, I immediately make a guess. What the heck is this talking about? What is the subject matter of what I'm reading? So like when someone comes up to Lucas and is like, starts talking, the context, the setting, the opening words are going to give you a guess on what he's talking about. And as he's talking to you, it's going through your ear, and you are interpreting what he's saying based upon this guess that you made. Now, we all can, for a moment, remember a time where someone was talking to us, and we thought they were talking about something. Then all of a sudden, a detail about what they were saying didn't jive with
that happens all the time. Yeah.
Yes. And so wait, hold on.
I was going to give an example. It's like,
please do.
You're talking to someone and you think that they're describing their child. Their child did this, their child did that. And then it turns out that the details aren't adding up, and you realize, oh, wait a second, you're talking about your pet dog. You're not talking about your child. And then the whole conversation makes more sense, right?
This happened last night to me. I was talking about the board of elders at the church, and my father-in-law thought I was talking about the board of our ministry, and we were kind of looking at each other because what he was saying and what I was saying was like, it doesn't fit. Now, Antonio, I hope we haven't just supported with beautiful illustrations something that you're about to say that's wrong. But go ahead, let's see.
So, when I read a passage, I start reading a passage, and what ends up happening, Lucas, is I make an initial guess on what the subject matter is.
Okay.
And I'm going to start processing the reading of that with that guess. Now, as I read on, if there are certain details that don't jive with it, what usually happens is that we end up getting dissonance, and we want to stick with our initial guess. So we support that initial guess with assumptions in that text that aren't really there. For instance,
Okay.
talking about Luke 3 or Matthew 3 and John the Baptist. I have seen from years and years of debate that people have hell on the brain. They have eternity on the brain. And if they can get hell or eternity into a passage, they're just going to do it. They read the word fire, or they read the word wrath, or they read the word this, or they read the word that, and they come and say, okay, this subject matter, John the Baptist is talking about hell. He's talking, who told you, who warned you to escape from to wrath to come? The axe is at the root of the trees, and all of this stuff. Oh my gosh, he must be talking about hell. But then you start reading about repentance and then works and this and this and that, and there are details about this being about hell that doesn't, or there says details about the passage that doesn't fit the conception that John the Baptist is talking about. And why do I say all this? Is that I really want to have us get back to the text and stop making assumptions about the text and try other guesses about what it's talking about. And since we have hell in the brain, we think that everything is talking about eternity. And I want to suggest that 98% of the Bible has nothing to do with eternity per se, hell or heaven per se. God cares about how we live in this time. And so when it comes to various doctrines, and this is the point I want to make, I feel that even in free grace theology, what has happened is, and I don't want to characterize this unfairly, but what I feel is that there is a section of free grace who wants to rest in their laurels, who wants to continue along with the traditions, who wants to continue along with the interpretations of time past, and wants to hunker down there. And there is another section that I call refining, who wants to continue to go back to the text and question all of, question past traditions, question past interpretations. And let me just really remind people of how free grace kind of has evolved, is that it started off with one issue and they tackled it and they got kind of a clarity on it. But then there was another issue. Once they had that, there was another issue, and then they started tackling that. Then there's another issue, started tackling that, because they kept on going back to the text. And the initial kind of work raised questions in other traditions and topics and doctrines, and so therefore more work and more time has to go on those with each successive generation. But with each successive generation, there are people who wanted to move forward and continue to go back to the text, where there's others on this other side wanting to hunker down. I am not going to sit there and say that I have a full grasp of free grace theology or the Bible, but there are people who, Calvinists are one. They continue to say, okay, we have everything all worked out in interpretation. We have everything worked out, and I'm not there. And I read theology books from free grace people, and they continue to characterize things in this traditional way that relies on traditional interpretations, where I feel that they have everything down.
So
of the T's crossed and I's dotted, and I'm just like, dude, I'm not there, bro. I continue going back to the text, because every time I circle around the Bible, I'm getting more background information that I'm taking into these passages. I'm going, whoa, this has this Jewish context. This has this, that. And I'm like going, the way that this has been characterized in time past ain't jiving with the way that I've been going around through the Bible and informing. And so maybe I had a wrong guess. Shawn?
Yeah. So, and this is somewhere where Antonio and I are, even if we're coming to different conclusions on different issues, our overall approach, I think, is the same. There are people who they'll take, let's say, Schaeffer's systematic theology, and their goal in life is just to teach that. And they're not questioning it, they're not researching it, they're just going to teach the tradition that they've inherited. And Antonio and I definitely are more like, no, we gotta look at this firsthand. We can't have an implicit faith. We want to own what we believe through serious study. And if we disagree with the tradition, then so be it. but we have to question it. You know, we have to ask those questions in order to move forward. And maybe sometimes we'll find that the tradition was right, but then maybe sometimes we'll find that it's wrong, and we've got to stick true to the text, whether or not it agrees with the tradition or not. And so I definitely agree with that spirit of inquiry, Antonio. And so that's why we talk every week, because we're both aiming for that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that in you too, because when you brought that breakout session at the GES 2 years ago on judgment, I appreciate your inquisitive mind that questions tradition. I hate tradition. I don't want to. It helped me in the beginning, right? Because that was this was the orthodox position of free grace that helped me get grounded. But that was as I was learning from people. Now I have long since more from learning from people, which gave me ideas of stuff where I got this book right now, the Bible, that, for instance, check out this page that I have in I have these. This is my second. That's my second Peter or first Peter. There.
Nice. Look at
For
that.
those who are listening on audio, it is just packed with
It's just-
the scrawling ink of
Each page
a beautiful
from that
mind.
point on is like
It
that,
is insane
you know?
looking.
And I'm learning more from the Bible now, and I'm so thankful for the people who went before me, because they're the one who framed the issues. I'm so thankful for the people who wrote before and who did the work. Louis Berry Schaefer did work, man. Walver did work. Pentecost did work. Schofield did work. Zane did work. Anderson's did work. All these people did work. And I have the benefit of having them be able to frame things for me that gave me whatever. But I feel that I can't rest there, man, because as I read, I have too many questions about the text that challenge the way that sometimes they've presented it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I hear you saying that theology as a development is dynamic. It should maybe be seen as something that changes a long time. But I do wonder, is there a role maybe like at the pastoral level, like a local pastor, is there a role for someone who says, you know, I don't want to develop, I just want to be a good teacher. I just want to take things from a teacher that I trust and bring that to my people? Or do you feel like everybody ought to be kind of in this mindset of questioning and reconsidering things that are traditional?
I've never had a question like that before. That's a great question. Some people have different callings. I feel I've been called to influence influencers. I'm not going to be the one in front of 500 people teaching people stuff. I want to be the one doing one-on-ones with pastors who are going to be teaching 500 people. And so I meet with about 5 to 6 pastors weekly, one-on-one, and we go through the Bible and theology, and God has opened the door for that, and that way I can teach men who will in turn find faithful men with whom to teach. And so not everyone's called to that, and I am very thankful.
It's almost like an apostolic. Now, I don't mean that in the necessarily charismatic way, but I mean that's also almost like you're working with those who are going to work with those who are being taught. I mean, that's really an interesting. I don't know a whole lot of people that make that their ministry. Like, how did that come about?
This how it came about. I really love my church, but it doesn't take stands on a lot of stuff. And so there's 30 pastors at the church, and you ask 30 pastors a question. You're going to get 30 answers. There's not a lot of homogenous stuff. And so obviously I'm very passionate about things having to do with the gospel, and I really love my church, and it's evangelistic, meaning like it desires to get people saved. And so my pastor is an amazing man of God, but people coming in, there's 30 pastors, kind of a mega church in San Diego, is like, man, I really want to be able to share with these people whom I love, who I do life and ministry with. I want to be able to share with them ways to be clearer. And it just more from there. I go,
wow,
what can I do? and I go, hey, you guys want to go through a book? And we went through The Hungry Inherit. If you guys have never read
okay, yeah.
The Hungry
Yeah.
Inherit, I'm just gonna be honest. That's my absolute favorite Zane Hodges book, and and I took them through that. I've taken like 15 of the pastors at my church through that one book.
Yeah.
And
What
it
was
just
the response
there
like?
where I continue meeting with them about other things. But I feel like I love teaching.
Yeah.
I love studying, and I love teaching what I study.
Yeah.
And that's how it kind of came about.
Yeah, man, that's really cool that you're doing that. Well, you know what? We've come to hour and 10. This might be our longest episode so far. Shawn, any final thoughts? You're kind of sitting there with a happy look on your face, as if you just had a honey biscuit. Are you are you satisfied?
No, I was thinking there was a whole other half of Antonio's life story that I wanted to hear about, because I've heard it before. Because it's really it was a story of, well, that showing that grace is not irresistible, and yet still Christians can fall away into bad things, and then God can still bring them back again. But maybe that's a story for another time, because we have been talking about this for
I would
over
love
now.
to do another. Antonio, would you be open to
My gosh, I really
doing this
would
again
love to.
sometime?
Because I want to share just one simple fact. The dude, my brother, who was very instrumental in getting me saved, has since become an LDS. He's since
Wow.
become Mormon.
Wow.
Wow.
He was going to the same Bible college as me, and he is super fallen away from evangelical Christianity.
Wow. Well, that hurts.
But I love you guys, dude. I want to be a part of FGI stuff. I want to go on a mission trip. I want to go on an Appalachian Trail hike and talk theology. I want to hang out. It's just money and time, but
I want to
love
live
you
in
guys.
your closet. I want to sleep on your bottom bunk.
I love what you guys are doing, man, and keep
I
on.
don't know.
You've
I
been
think we
called
need to
to-
go to Southern California and
I would
do
love
a regional,
I would love to. Some of my
down there.
some of
I
my
would love-
favorite. I don't know. I'll call them like atmospheric experiences have been in California. I mean, just the weather and the weather and the weather. You know, I love California.
This was the most temperate, most moderate summer we've ever had. It got into the 90s
Really?
during the summer, maybe 3 times, and it didn't hit 100 once. It's all been in the 80s, dude.
man.
Wow, beautiful.
All summer long.
I've been told that the climate's changing. I thought there was trouble. What's going on? Did y'all get hit? Did y'all get hit by a hurricane or something?
Oh my gosh, it was the most disappointing thing in the world. Like, I mean, it rained hard for like 15 minutes, and that's it.
And that was it.
And everyone was going crazy.
Well, if there's a state park or national park, maybe we could do we can do a family camp in
Dude,
temperate
they have
San Diego.
Yes. So California is known for its state beaches that you can camp at the beaches. So it has a variety of beach camping
I like it.
at their state park. These are state park beaches.
Man, I love it.
Awesome.
All right, you put
Yeah.
that planting the seed.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's wrap this up for today. But it sounds like we'll put together another time where we can talk to Antonio. Antonio, you're very entertaining and
Thank you.
exciting to talk to. Very passionate, and I think we gain a lot from spending some time with you. So,
For the next
guys, why
time, though, let's do a little mock debate.
yeah, sure, yeah, that'd be great.
Or it's a mock, not debate. It's a mock, kind of going back and forth
Yeah.
on subject.
Yeah, I mean,
And show
maybe
people
we.
how people can disagree agreeably.
Yeah, I
I love that.
interviewed Grant Holly yesterday and found out that he is a 2-time world champion in Taekwondo, and I was thinking we ought to get him in an actual literal ring with somebody, and they debate theology while they kick each other. So it'd be like this amazing illustration for this is what we don't want. Now he won't agree to that, I'm sure. But anyway, hey Antonio, we love you, man. Thanks for coming on. We'll talk again. Stay on the line after I stop the recording, and we'll mop up a couple things. But thanks for being here, and it was a great talk.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
See you, man.